There we go. All right. We are live. Adam, I didn't catch Adam O. Is that how you go by?
Adam O's fine. Yeah, my last name's difficult to pronounce, and so
That's okay.
just keep it simple.
Yeah, so welcome. This is Craig LeBlanc, founder and host, one of the 8 or 11 hosts at the Bitcoin Daily every day, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Adam was one of our guests, gosh, probably in the early days. I think you came, I'm trying to think what show you came on or you spoke. It was Surfer Jim that got you in touch with us. This might have been.
Yeah, I've known Surfer Jim since 2018. We were both in a Telegram group where everybody was still anonymous. I think I was still everybody just called me Denver back then.
Yeah.
I didn't have my name attached to anything. I actually I had an internal promise or an internal condition where I told myself I was going to remain an anon out on Twitter and the internet in the Bitcoin world unless Steve Barber hired me at Upstream Data, and then he hired me, and I was like, "Damn it, I have to." I mean, I can't call oil and gas professionals and go by Denver or be posting trying to have serious conversations about how Bitcoin mining disrupts upstream energy production under this pseudonym. So I think I'm gonna have to just put my face out there and just take it head on.
Yeah, we were having a really good mining discussion, and of course on our Thursday show, which is dedicated just to grid scale energy production and mining, and we had this guy from Africa that knew nothing about Bitcoin but was big into energy production, grid scale energy production in Africa. Nigeria, I think, was the country he was from. And you could tell by the end of the show, the general consensus was, being able to choose how you generate electricity is a luxury of the first world because they have no electricity and are in energy deserts. And after that show, Jim said, you got to get in touch with Adam. Y'all are going to hit it off. Like a lot of the same sentiments as far as we need all energy of all types. And then I've kind of been following you, just your take on energy production, especially with petroleum. And of course, me being a Louisiana boy, growing up around petrochemical and stuff, it's pretty much our entire economy in Louisiana. I'm not sure if you know this, but we refine between us and Texas almost all, I think the majority of all oil that comes into the country.
Yeah.
So I grew up with oil refineries like literally in my backyard.
That's awesome. Did you know people working at the refineries? And, was that common?
My grandfather was filled up, worked at the Anchorage tank farm, which is in Port Allen, which is the West Bank. So all these big oil tankers would come in from overseas and just pull up. Matter of fact, I lived on the Mississippi River. So my house is on the river. And when the river was up.
Can you fish from your dock kind of a thing?
No, it's we're on the levee. So you got to walk.
Okay. Got you. Okay. You're on the levee. That's fair.
But you would see these ships the size of buildings because the river would come up and be on the levee. And so then you'd see this massive ship jacked up.
Just eye level,
floating above you. Like it's almost, 30
like you're
foot
in Holland.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so my whole life, I see these Exxon oil tankers just coming in to the largest, at the time, growing up, this was the largest oil refinery in North America, the one in Baton Rouge. That was my backyard. And then Placid was another smaller oil refinery in the Port Allen side. So we're surrounded by oil refineries that are making diesel and gas and jet fuel and stuff like that. So it's hard to be
always one of those surprising. I remember the day, the moment that I was kind of and it wasn't, all that long ago, right? I was an adult when I was enlightened to the fact that I think it's 45 to 50% of every barrel of crude oil doesn't go to liquid fuels, right? It goes to other petrochemicals, adhesives, right? Lacquers, sealants, dyes, all that kind of stuff. And so,
there's so many products. All your plastic.
All the plastics, obviously. But beyond that, the very necessary mechanical chemicals that people don't really think about, right? A lot of people don't think about a wind turbine having this massive demand for lubricants and other petrochemicals, let alone, the epoxy resin that it's actually made out of is, carbon fiber being a petroleum product, or at least a product of hydrocarbons. And so I remember that kind of being a shocking thing where I was like, well, what the hell do they do with the other half of the barrel of oil? Like, what could it possibly be turned into? And then when you Google it and you start looking, the list is too long to read, right? It's like thousands and thousands of very everyday products that, you know, that I mean, leather, like treating leather and other, you know what I mean? It's just like everything. I mean, let alone the road we drive on, right? Like the actual asphalt. And, you know, it's just it is the foundation of all industries. That's really like what I learned quite quickly is that, and it's something that, you know, I fell backwards into oil and gas. Like I didn't go to school to become a petroleum engineer. I didn't even think, you know, when I graduated college, I didn't have any idea that I would be going into the oil and gas industry in the near future. In fact, like my passion was more toward tech, like mobile gaming and things like that. And then I just kind of fell ass backwards into oil and gas. And it was, you know, I'm a curious person, and I can't work at a job and not like try to figure out all the facets of it. You know, I was also doing business development. Yeah. Well, I'm like, it's like I'm doing this, you know, I might as well understand it, right? Like figure out, you know, like otherwise I can't really have an intellectual conversation with my, you know, my professional colleagues and such. And so like every time I would learn a little bit more about upstream, especially oil and gas production, I just fell more and more in love with it. And it was like right as I was just becoming obsessed with oil and gas that I learned about Bitcoin. And so,
where'd you grow up?
I grew up here in Colorado. Yeah, in like southwest of Denver. If you know of Red Rocks Amphitheater, it's famous. Yeah, I'm like 2 miles from Red Rocks Amphitheater.
So give me the, you know, coming from Louisiana, I know we're all petrochemical, like it's just those type of plants everywhere. Give me the landscape of Colorado when it comes to oil and gas. Like what does their landscape look like?
Yeah, so I mean the primary play in Colorado is just northeast of Denver. It's called the DJ Basin, the Denver Julesburg Basin, and it's like pretty close to the city. In fact, it's only maybe, I want to say like the heart of it is maybe 15, 18 miles, 20 miles north, a few miles east, and then it bleeds down like the eastern side of Denver, down even to where like kind of southeast of Denver. There's some plays out there, some horizontal fracturing that's happening. And then I'm less familiar with, so like in the far northwestern corner of Colorado, which like borders with Wyoming and like kind of in like Utah, Idaho area over there. There's another basin play. I believe the DJ Basin. And again, I'm sure somebody can correct me, but like from what I remember, I think the Codell Sand, that is one of the primary plays there. I want to say it's at like 7,000 feet vertical, so 7,000 feet down.
And that's now, was like that opened up by fracking, or was that big oil?
No, there was a lot of vertical wells here. Like, you know, it's a, you know, Colorado's a cool state. And by the way, like, so if you ever get the chance to have like a really, really passionate and nerdy oil and gas geologist on your show, like get them on. They are the funnest. Every time I run into like a geologist at conferences and things, I always try to pick their brain because they are some of the, I mean, they're the best people to talk to because, I mean, as boring as it may sound, right? Like they study rocks or whatever. They really study the formation of the surface of the crust of the earth. And Colorado's very interesting where, you know, the eastern side of the state, like Denver's kind of like, it's a little bit eastern, a little bit north, but it's kind of like almost in the center. And like the state is divided in half where we have Great Plains, you know, it's like we are the end of the Midwest. Right. And then it just, I mean, I can't imagine being like Lewis and Clark and coming over, you know, through either like what is now Nebraska or Kansas. And then all of a sudden you just see this wall, like as far as you can see north and south of, you know, white capped mountains.
It's impressive.
And like thinking like, oh shit, like we can't go around these. Like we're going to have to go over that, you know, like, yeah, like there's no going around that. Speaking of people who would love to have had some petrochemicals and hydrocarbons when they were on there.
Yeah.
Do you know how long it took them to get to Oregon, by the way? Lewis and Clark?
I have no idea.
What would you guess? From like start to finish?
I mean, at least a season. Was it was longer than a year?
28 months, I think, is what.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
And that was the ones that had.
Think about how comfortable we are and why we're so comfortable in this modern day and age. Like what it takes me to drive across the country, it's like a week. If like, I could do it. I could do it faster if I, you know, didn't want to stop and like see, didn't want to like take in any sights. Just hit I-80 and just bolt. 28 months, right? Like that 28 months. What is that like? We're talking about 840 days.
From where to where? What was their starting journey?
Wasn't it? It was right at the Mississippi, right? So it was like Mississippi. So that wasn't even the whole continent, right? It was Mississippi River, right? It was the new territory, right? That was the exploration. It was going west.
Right.
So like think about how uplifting, how seriously hydrocarbons, specifically crude oil and petroleum, positively uplifts, human beings. But Colorado's a fun part, and because of the mountain range, I mean, again, I'm not a geologist, but like from the geologists I've talked to, there's like some really cool formation. Like Colorado's like a geologist kind of a dream in a way where, the tectonic plates making the Rocky Mountains, or like the overlapping of plates pushing up the Rocky Mountains. There's like an oil well just like 2 miles north of me. What's funny is Home Depot actually owns the site now. It's a shut in, like they've sealed the well. It's not producing. Sure. But it was like one of the most western wells way back when, and there's like a big Home Depot, facility, like right next to where this well was. And I learned that obviously being in oil and gas, but it's one of those seemingly boring. Most people I talk to, I think they think of oil and gas as like this antiquated, like yesteryear industry, like almost like it doesn't even happen. Like almost nobody is in that, yeah. And like, meanwhile, like it's actually, oil demand worldwide is like pretty much higher every year. Like sometimes we have these like little plateaus or dips, but it's like, so long as population is going up, demand is going up.
And energy right now.
Oh, I mean, it's absolutely massive, right? Like, not to mention from a technological standpoint, it's as advanced as aerospace technology, right? Like one guy I'm going to talk to pretty soon. I'm actually talking to him on Sunday, I think. He's on Twitter. Everybody should check him out. I think his handle is Tejano Brown, De La Rosa. He works, he does wireline and perforation, and like they call them like guns, right? Where like you actually, you're 2 miles down or a mile and a half down. You might be a mile horizontal, and you're sending an electrical signal to a device that's going to effectively shoot off bullets, like shoot off projectiles to perforate or puncture holes in the casing that's been laid down there, so that the oil can flow into the tubing, and so that you can actually produce the well. And like the way in which the perforation is aimed, or like the direction of where they're going to perforate, it's all like insanely technical. And you got to imagine, I mean, think about being like 7,000 feet underwater, 7,000 feet under earth, like the amount of pressure, the amount of things that can go wrong, the amount of, you know what I mean? Like it's as advanced as, trying to get to outer space, right? Like if not more complicated. It's
super
really
advanced.
cutting edge. Like it's a lot of, cutting edge innovation comes out of the oil field, right? I mean, it's, like stuff that gets used for aerospace is proven in oil field first. So.
Yeah, the drilling technology is just mind-boggling, and you see these drill stems, and you think they're rigid, but at that length, it's like a spaghetti noodle. And the fact that they can still control where that head.
And it's just so bizarre. I mean, it's really hard for me to picture in my mind, like a 2 mile long pipe of, with very frequent interconnections or bridges and like even just the casing and the tubing and dealing with those pressures, right? The pressure, like the casing pressure, the tubing pressure, and monitoring all that. And like, I mean, there's the one thing I want to talk to Tejano Brown about is like wireline is something I don't very much understand. It's like kind of it's like microscopic camera, kind of not microscopic, but like scopic cameras, putting a camera down. And Like like I've seen him post on Twitter before where like they pulled up a wrench that somebody like accidentally dropped down the bore. But all this, like, I'm not an oil and gas expert. I don't know if I wouldn't say that. I'm certainly knowledgeable about the industry, certainly more knowledgeable, I think, than the average person, because I think the average person is quite ignorant to oil and gas. It's not very sexy, maybe. It's not like social media or big tech or something, or electric cars or whatever. But like the cool thing is I get to hang out and talk with, and I just get to naturally I get connected with some of like the smartest minds, very humble, very down to earth, very sober minded and tempered thinkers. And I just listen with extreme intensity, right? Like Steve Barber being one of them, the founder of Upstream, right? I have a whole file on my computer that's like Steve Barber quotes when I'm on the phone with him and he says something and I go quick, like type it out, because I'm like I need to think about that. And then years later, people start talking about things in Bitcoin mining, and I go back and look, and like Steve wrote an article about it in like 2019. It's like, man, that's got to be frustrating to be that ahead of the curve. It's got to be annoying,
One of my greatest mentors, his name was Mr. Daniel Hurd. He owned a huge valve company down here, and he had right under a $500 million exit. And then, I met.
So he's doing okay.
Oh yeah, this is back in the 90s when he had that exit, and I met him in the early 2000s. And I've had many of my other mentors come to me and say, Craig, you need to have this guy influence your mind, because you don't have to be that smart to be as wealthy as he is, but he is exceptionally smart. And one of the first things he told me, he said, I was one of the world's best players in valves and distribution and stuff. So I thought I could figure anything out. So I was like, all my buddies are making money in oil and gas. I'm going to do that and go dominate it. And he said he got his butt handed to him. And that's where he learned the hard lesson of stick to what you know. So
yeah, like don't get out of bounds, right? Like again, stay humble, right? Like I love Matt Odell's phrase of, stay humble, stack sats. I think people focus on the stack sats. I like to focus on the stay humble part, right? Because what I've learned in life, and I certainly, when I was 18 to 22, 24 years old, I was a lot more reckless and invincible, right? I've learned that you can stay humble or you can get humbled. Like if you don't stay humble, this world will humble you, right?
100%. Bitcoin will humble you,
and it typically doesn't take very long. Along those lines, I always like to say too that you, like you said, right, you don't have to be as intelligent as this guy to get wealthy. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest problems is that people, it happens. I see it happen in Bitcoin where like, you wake up one day. Oh, nice thumbs up. You wake up one day and the price of Bitcoin is up 40% or something. People think that their IQ just went up 40%, because like their net worth went up 40%. And now, so they must be smarter today than they were yesterday. That's and again, it's like, stay humble, something at Upstream that I think, Steve has done really well with the leadership there is, very often I'm approached by guys that have project scopes, things like maybe trying to reuse heat, right? And they want us to help design this, system where they're going to, use the heat from either the miners or the engine to do so on and so forth. And, Steve's always coming in and he's like, listen, like that's downstream of what we focus on. We're focused on power generation. We're focused on building the best Bitcoin mine, the best, enclosure technology. That's outside of our scope. Like, yes, we can consult and we can make sure that, we integrate well with whatever plans. But really we're, time spent on one thing is time taken away from another. And we're trying to be the best at these facets. So like stay in our lane, right? I think a lot of companies get lost, right? Just chasing sales, chasing ideas, rather than diligently staying focused on what principled thinking, staying focused on what you believe to be the disrupting factor, what's going to set you up to, compete and participate in a disruptive industry for a decade, 2 decades, which is what I love. Like I wouldn't be working for Upstream Data if Steve had some plan to IPO in 3 years and just get rich and sell out. That wouldn't be very interesting to me. Yeah. Like it's not exciting. Like, getting wealthy. Like I always think to myself, like, then what? Like you get insanely wealthy. Like, I mean, at some point there's not much of a difference in quality of life once you are, like maybe the only difference is maybe like you can always fly private recklessly once you get up to like a certain net worth. But like above 10 million bucks, it's like almost all the same. Like you don't need to work anymore. You can pretty much live on your interest, just get a couple of percent a year and you're bringing in, 15 grand a month. Like if you can't live on 15 grand a month, you have a lifestyle problem. You don't have an income problem.
Right.
And so like that's a lifestyle, it's like being, significantly overweight. It's like you don't have an exercise problem, you have a diet problem at some point,
Right. You're the calorie
so,
deficit there.
yeah, like, it doesn't matter how hard you work if you're taking in 20,000 calories a day. Like this is not an exercising problem. So I always think like, then what? Like just, umbrella drinks on a beach. Like
It gets old.
that sounds like shit to me. Like that sounds
It gets
awful.
old quick.
Yeah, I'm not a beach person anyway. Even umbrella drinks like in the hot tub in your mountain estate, like that sounds good when I'm tired, but like after a day or two of that, I'm like, I want to go build shit. Like I want to go compete. I want to create value. Maybe I guess when I'm 60 or something, I'll be more tired.
Where does that come from? Where do you get that drive? I mean, I've always told men that, because I worked a lot with mentorship at the LSU incubator. And I was like, guys, you need the mission more than the mission needs you. If you are just bored, that is some of the worst things you can allow to happen in your life. You need a challenge. Where did you get that? Were you like in athletics, or is it got from your upbringing, that drive to have a purpose?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a couple of things. I think primarily, one thing is I'm, extraordinarily blessed, right? If being born is a sort of lottery, like I won it. I was born to parents who loved me, were financially comfortable. They cared about me, being a good person. They weren't like drug addicts, or, they weren't using me to get whatever, ends that they wanted. Like as much as we were very financially comfortable, my dad was not somebody to like spoil, at least not me and my brother. Like my sisters, maybe. They were a lot more, he was a lot softer to them than he was us. I can remember like I wanted to go to this camp. I think it was called Camp Timberline, back when I was like 14, like just before high school, or no, just freshman year. And it was really expensive to go. It was like, I think it was like $5 or $7 grand or something. Like this is back in, early 2000s, mid 2000s. And it was awesome though. Like you got to like ride dirt bikes and like rock climb and like ride horses, like all this crazy, like for like a month. And my dad was like, okay, if you get a 3.95 GPA, you can go. And I got like a 3.89, and he's like, no, you're not going. And I was like, what I was so pissed. I was so pissed.
Terrible.
But then he,
smart.
Well, later on, he told me if I got a 3.95, he would get me a car, like not a nice car. It was just like a Jeep Wrangler, like a little used Jeep Wrangler. And bet your ass I got a 3.95.
That's still a cool car.
It's the same. It's not the exact same, but it's the same model car I drive today. Actually, it's a standard transmission. I love it. It keeps me safe. It can't even go like 80 miles an hour. So I can't even.
That's just the Colorado vibe.
Well, that's part of it. Like a lot of, when you're in snow and stuff, like you don't want a rear wheel drive car. You certainly want 4-wheel drive. But I really like the standard transmission. I truly think like it has kept me alive, right? Because like I have to, even though it's second nature, like shifting, I'm not thinking about shifting in the car. I've been doing this for 13 years or something I've been driving. But you have to stay engaged when it's a standard transmission. Right. Yeah. Like you can't be texting. You can't be like, very much daydreaming, because you're just, there's a greater intensity to operating the car. So I think it's kept me alive. So I like that. But, my dad always instilled that drive. My parents are kind of like a rags to riches story. Like my dad busted his ass. He was an early employee at a company that was very successful. He's still on the board there of Dish Network, a satellite TV company. Really very analogous actually to Upstream Data in many ways, right? Like very disruptive, this new thing, launching satellites up into the sky to disrupt the cable companies, new way to get TV to people out in the middle of nowhere. Like it was a cuckoo idea. Like people would laugh at it in the early days. It wasn't going to work. There was everybody focused on the problems rather than, the benefits or the means. And, and obviously it was successful, headquartered here in Colorado. And so I was always, I guess, inspired by what he did. And, how he stayed focused on a single mission on, disrupting the telecommunications industry. And, for decades, I don't think very many people work at the same job, like trying to push the same mission consistently for, 15, 20 years. Like I don't think that's very common. I mean, what is 20 years? It's like 7,300 days or something like that. Like that's rigorous consistency. That takes incredible discipline, and you have to be passionate about it or you'll get bored, in the first 1,000 days, right? You'll get bored in the first 15%.
It's just focus for a long period of time. I think people always try to see what they can accomplish in a year. They should think about what can they accomplish in a decade, because you need that time to attain mastery. If you just can't master something that quickly.
Well, and you've got to be open to how ignorant you are, right? Again, stay humble. You have to, if you think you know everything, you're handicapping yourself, right? Because you're not keeping your antennas open to new ideas. If you're not willing to admit you're wrong, that's something I do love about Twitter or X, right? Is certainly, I think it's better today than when it was ran by Jack Dorsey, or the CIA, whichever way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, what a fucking joke. It was disgusting. The way that the 3-letter agencies had influence over Twitter was just like, you've got to be kidding me. But
I heard Twitter was the best one of all of them. They were,
it was still, you're right. It was still the best one, but it was like, it's the least, it's the least repugnant piece of shit. Right. Exactly. And I think I think it's really important to have to have a place where ideas can freely go to battle. Right. Yes, there should be maybe some limitations on certain insanity, like violent threats and all that, kind of the assumed, I guess, kind of issues on the right on the fringe. But other than that, let ideas go to battle. And if you're somebody who wants to participate in the open battle of ideas, you're gonna be wrong, right? You're not always gonna be right. So you have to be able to prepare and mentally understand that you're not always gonna be right. I tweeted just the other day. I tweeted something. I said I was tweeting about eating a whole jar of jalapenos, and I was like, vegetables are good. And somebody gets in the comments and they're like, hey man, jalapenos are fruit. They're berries actually. And I was like, no shit. That's what? Awesome. And yeah, I was like, I didn't know that. By the way, I've grown hundreds of pounds myself of jalapenos,
of berries.
Had no idea that they were a fruit. So I wasn't personally hurt by being wrong. I was just like, shit, that's awesome. This is how people, this is how you learn. Right.
Yeah. When I was building my second company, I got an Elon Musk quote from SpaceX, the engineers, and he says, every rule we have, everything we're doing right now is wrong, especially if I said it, because no one ever questions me, because I'm like, oh, he's never wrong. So all of my ideas get vetted least of all. So question everything.
Which is problematic. That's a bad thing, right? Right. I think that's natural. It's not only SpaceX that deals with that. The guy that's, it's kind. I mean, this is, I think, universal to some degree, and I see it in Bitcoin mining, where I talk to all these people, and everybody has this assumption that the public Bitcoin miners are the smartest guys, right? They're the least likely to fail. The bigger the company, the better they are, and it's purely based on market cap. That has to be 1-to-1 correlated, or associated with intelligence and strategy and success and creativity. And I'm like, that's just simply not true. It doesn't mean that there aren't some of the smartest people at those companies. There definitely are. Pierre Rochard is somebody who he was the first guy I started listening to in Bitcoin. He wasn't even in mining. He was just a Bitcoiner. And speaking about tempered and very sober thinking, Pierre and humble, Pierre is the epitome of that. And, he works at Riot. I think, they'd be a fool to lose him. He's a great guy. But, this is very new. And two, that assumption, again, just opens yourself up for disaster, right? Like, I mean, at every company, the CEO, like everything he says can't, it's like unquestionable. And that shouldn't be the case. Like, at Upstream, if you don't challenge and push back on things that like Barber says, like he's not happy about that. Like he wants criticism.
Yes.
Like it's like open debate is absolutely promoted at the company for good reason.
That's actually another, I think the second rule of Elon. He says, if you're not deleting parts and processes so aggressively that 10% of the time you have to add them back, you're not deleting aggressively enough. So he wants you to delete and be like, oh, we need that, put that back. He said, if it's not 10% of the time.
No, it's like, try like, being focused or at least diligent about cutting off like dead weight. And then sometimes you cut it off and realize like, shit, that wasn't dead weight. Like that was,
right.
that was worth it. Like we cut off 5 pounds and in order to solve that void, we added 10,
Right.
like problematic. Like, it's tough. Like it's tough. Something I've thought about a lot is the bureaucracy of a company, right? It's really tough to scale without getting into the bureaucratic kind of bullshit of a company, like where it's like, you have to just talk to somebody about how you talk to somebody else. And like, there's like so much time wasted. You can't own certain things because you have to get like approvals and it's like, how do you scale with trying to, you can't eliminate or avoid that entirely, but how do you minimize that? How do you give ownership while still having kind of like standardization in place so that, you can have some quality control and you can, people can leave the company and it's like not a disaster trying to figure out what happened. Like I think, as much as people can focus on the shortcomings and the failures and the mistakes, there's often so many mistakes avoided. Like, I mean, I think at Upstream, Steve has made some decisions where, gosh, like I think back and it's like, my God, the amount of times that, a mistake could have been made. Like, and I think if I'm being honest, if I'm being humble, like I probably would have made that mistake had I been in his position. That would have just absolutely like, just, put so much weight or pressure on the company. And I'm always inspired by his, his ability to like reflect and try to think, stay thinking long-term. He's been really great at the helm, and it's been fun to, to be on the ship with him, right. To try to watch this. And I don't always agree with him. Not at all. Not even close. But like, I certainly respect, the position he's in. And I think like, I would be very put off by working for somebody at a company who didn't have something personal at stake. Like I think about those CEOs who like, maybe they don't even hold very much or any equity in the company. They have a fat salary package. Like they really don't give a shit if the thing fails. Like look at Boeing. You know what I mean? Like there's like an economics major, he's got like a bachelor degree, maybe a master's. I don't even know. But like the guy at the helm of that company, he is just, I think his salary went up like 40% from last year. I don't know if you should go find the video of him testifying before a congressional committee. And one of the representatives asks him, like, what was your salary last year? And he can't say the number. He's so ashamed. which like, if you're,
I saw that.
Right. Where he was like, it's a big number. How much is it? It's a good salary. And it's like, say the fucking number, man. Like, if you're worth your salaries, you won't be ashamed of it. Like, I make this much. It's public information. It's not like this is a secret. Like I make this much because I bring a lot of value to the company because I've made these decisions and it made the company this much money. So honestly, it's a drop in the hat. I saved the company $4.7 billion. Pay me $20 million. Like, everybody's winning. But obviously he's ashamed by it, and for good reason, because it's like, what value are you actually bringing here? Right? Are you just like financializing the game? Are you just playing the fiat game, just leveraging like debt markets and bridge loans and, so you can get your massive compensation package and sip umbrella drinks all day. or are
Well,
you trying to compete?
give us a little context as far as, the company you work for now, what it does and how you got involved with it. Because I know that was a cool story that you shared with us on the Spaces.
Yeah. So I work for Upstream Data Inc. We're a company that was founded in Alberta, Canada, in Lloydminster, right on the border of Alberta and Saskatchewan, actually, about 1,000 miles north of Denver. I always tell people, like, primarily, first and foremost, we're an oil and gas service company. We're a full fabricator. We have a motor shop. I think we've got like 50,000 square feet of manufacturing space. We've got a big shop. We do a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with Bitcoin mining. Like we, reman a lot of engines. We build a lot of enclosures for oil field, for heater treaters and separators and pumps and, whatever drop down shacks. We've built ice fishing shacks, actually, being up in Canada. So we're a full fabricator. Our competitive advantage, I think, in our primary product line and I guess our primary revenue driver is what we call our hash generators, which is a single skid natural gas engine with a Bitcoin mine, a load center, all in a single unit, kind of a plug and play drop on the oil field for any oil and gas producers who have flare or stranded gas. They can drop this, generate power, mine, effectively sell their gas by mining Bitcoin, and at a price point that is attractive, right? They can oftentimes reduce either regulatory pressure, regulatory costs, reduce a liability, but ultimately helping them monetize that which they can't monetize otherwise. I found the company in like middle to late 2018 is when it was like August of 2018 is when I discovered Upstream Data. I thought I had an original thought. I was working in oil and gas. I was working for a company. I was kind of like their director of sales and marketing for a production accounting software. A soft kind of like a QuickBooks, but for oil, gas, and water, like to account for the hydrocarbons and the liquids and gases on a well site. Most people don't know this, but there's very strict and varying reporting requirements for oil and gas producers. Like depending upon the state you're in, you have to report to the federal government one way. You have to report to your partners one way. You have to report to the state one way. And like Wyoming is different than Colorado, is different than North Dakota. Like they ask for different things. They want you to structure your reporting differently. So it's kind of a nightmare. Like it is antiquated. It's sometimes you have to like fax in. I can't remember. There was like a state where you had to like still fax in your report every month. It was it was like welcome to the 21st century, people. But anyway, that's what I was doing, and I was having a hard time early on, like late 2017, early 2018. I was having a hard time selling this software because I really didn't understand it. I didn't understand oil and gas accounting, like production accounting. So I went to my bosses, and it was a small company. There was only like 5 people. I was one of 5 people, and I went to the founders there, and I was like, "Listen, like, first of all, everybody in the oil and gas industry is smarter than me, and they have an incredible, nose for bullshit, right? Like, I can't fool them. I can't pretend that I understand what I'm talking about. Like, they're engineers, like they pick up on it really quickly. One of the things I tell people, to give an example, is there was a time when I would say things like dig a well. And my boss at one point, he was like, "Adam, you drill a well. You don't fucking dig a well. Okay. Like you sound like an idiot." And I was like, shit. Okay. Like I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm an idiot.
You didn't.
Yeah. I didn't know. But so I told him this, and he was like, "Okay, well, we'll get you up to speed." And I just went into this intensive training process with my boss one-on-one every day, where I was doing production accounting for various companies that they were outsourcing their production accounting to us using our software. So I was hands-on using it. Their pumpers were sending their daily data capture, their grease books into me, and I was inputting the data and doing the monthly reporting. And then at the same time, my boss, I wish I had taken more pictures of this, but we had the big whiteboard in my office, and every day he was sitting there drawing out like how a well is drilled, what it means to, horizontally fracture. And, again, I was like, what the hell is casing pressure? What is tubing pressure? Like those. And so he like drew it out, and he's like, this, so you have a casing. He's like, this is like the bore of the well. Then you have a tube. And like, he walked me through all this. And so, I give a lot of credit to My boss is there. His name is Rick Hornock. He was very patient with me and taught me a lot. And then right as I started kind of running, like right as I started getting sales, one of the, kind of like one of the badges of honor that I got is I got one of the biggest oil and gas producers in Colorado, Anschutz. I got them on our software, which was like a huge grab, right? I mean, they have like they're like one of the buildings downtown Denver, and they have like 6 floors. So like they have like staircases like in the, it was amazing. Like I went down there, it was like, we're a 5-person company, like a software company, like we're small. It was a good software product and we were cheap, and it worked. But like it was very intimidating going down there. I was 26 or something years old at the time. I was snot-nosed, didn't know shit. One day I saw an article about Bitcoin. I saw an article about the mining death spiral. And that was a sexy title. Interesting. And I kind of figured Bitcoin was a scam, or at least it wasn't anything notable. I figured I already knew that fiat money was broken. I was an econ major in college. I built econometric models. Like I could do Chairman, Jerome Powell's job. Like the chairman of the Fed, I could do what he does. It's really not complicated. It's very simple. So it's very simple to understand like how screwed they are, like how they don't have any options. But I understood that very well about how that, like how Keynesian, modern monetary theory was flawed. But Bitcoin, I figured, was along the same lines. And I figured that whoever was producing it was much like with, Keynesian central banking, whoever was producing Bitcoin was the one scamming everybody else. So I went to go figure out, how is this thing produced, right? Like I was like, I bet you my goal was like to figure out where the scam lies, like to intellectually be able to describe myself, how this is a rigged game, who's winning, who's losing, and why I shouldn't play. And upon understanding how it was produced, I understood quite quickly, once I already knew this inherently, but once I explicitly read about, the limitations on ultimately how thermodynamic law relates to computer science, right? How you cannot get a computer to execute a hash, right? The simple change a 0 to a 1 or 1 to a 0. You can't get a computer to do that with 0 energy, right? Like even if it's the most efficient thing ever, it's non-zero, right? Like it's a non-zero amount of energy. And once I understood that, it very quickly became clear to me, like this is an open and competitive energy market. Right? Like this is just an energy game. And meanwhile, I was sitting at my computer every day and I knew like the exact coordinates of where there were wells that were flaring insane amounts of energy. They were just burning it, right? Because they didn't have infrastructure. They didn't have any pipeline interconnection. And so, and meanwhile, while I'm reporting on how much gas was flared on this pad or this site, I'm seeing this site over here, their sales meter is ticking this number, and it's similar to this number. So these guys are over here are making, $5,000 a day on the same amount of gas that these guys are wasting. And I asked my boss, why are these guys just wasting $5,000 a day of gas? And he, very quickly explained to me, like, it's, they're not just wasteful, right? These guys don't just want to waste things or burn. He's like, it's economically stranded. The cost, it would cost tens of millions of dollars and decades to get a pipeline interconnection where this well is. And the ROI on that sucks. Capital is better spent elsewhere, right? Like this is just a capital allocation issue. And so
kind of explain to the pleb what that means. Like why do they flare off? What are they trying to get to? Why is this a waste product for them and not for the Bitcoin mining?
Well, there's an important distinction. Like, so a lot of times people talk about stranded energy, right? And that can mean a few different things. The lowest hanging fruit is associated gas. So there's an oil well. It's primarily, every time somebody drills, typically they're drilling for oil. All right. When oil is found, almost every time that oil is successfully, drilled for, gas comes along with it. If they don't have relatively easy access to sell the gas, like a pipeline. Gas is not, you're not able to like truck gas to market. And well, I mean, you could, but you'd spend more trucking it to market than it's worth, right? You'd spend $10 to make $5, right? So you have a couple options. You can either stop pulling out the oil from the well, which the oil's $80 a barrel and maybe the well's making 5 barrels a day. Like that's $400 a day. That's what, 70 something, or sorry, like 120, grand a year, something like that. Like, are you going to stop making 120 grand a year just because you can't sell the gas for a profit? Well, no. So what are you going to do? Well, we're just going to burn the gas, right? Like, so that we can make 120 grand a year. Because we got to do something with the gas. We don't want to just vent it into the atmosphere, which, by the way, that still does happen. Certainly outside of North America, that happens a lot, where regulations are almost non-existent. But even in North America, venting is, it's occurring. But typically it's run to a flare stack, which costs money. So they actually have to invest money just to burn this thing off so that they can continue to produce the oil. That's like the lowest hanging fruit that oftentimes people talk about with stranded energy, right?
What's your pitch to those guys that don't understand Bitcoin mining and how it can use, turn that into an asset?
Oh, it's easy. I mean, well, not easy. It's simple, right? It's I inform them that they're already one of the best Bitcoin miners in the world. They just don't know it, right? Like I think, and many times, oil and gas producers are, and anybody in the oil and gas industry, I think would agree with me on this. Like they're slow to change. They don't want to be the first guy through the wall, right? Like they don't want to get bloody. And this happens in a lot of other industries, but they often, they look for like to see what the big dogs are doing. Like they wait to see what, Chevron or Shell or Anadarko or whoever. They wait to see what those guys are doing before they do the same thing. Again, back to like my software, the company I worked for selling software. The reason it was selling to Anschutz was a really big deal is because after that, I could just go to companies and say, oh yeah, well, Anschutz is using our software. And they'd be like, oh, sweet, sign me up. Like they didn't even care if I talked about how it worked. They just, if they're using it, then it's got to be good, right? Like it's kind of that assumption.
They've done the vetting for them.
Again, back to the bigger companies that like they can't be doing anything wrong,
Right.
They're the smartest guys. And so for better or for worse, that's the reality. And I think they have this idea that mining Bitcoin like requires a computer science degree. Like you need a software engineer. I always tell them, I'm like, if you're imagining like the Matrix where there's like 15 screens and all these crazy, letters, like throw that out the window. I was like, what you need to imagine is changing your Wi-Fi password. Like that's about as complicated as it gets when you're to set up a Bitcoin miner. I did it just a couple of weeks ago with a guy who never mined Bitcoin. He was legacy oil and gas. Has one of the coolest names ever. His name's Barrett, like the 50 caliber rifle. And I told him, I was like, give me a call whenever your miners get delivered. We'll do it together on the phone. I'll help you configure these things. And it was a 15, 20-minute phone call. We got the first two configured. And then it's just repeat the process for all the other ones. And so he was off and running. Very simple, right? Copy and paste. So I just enlightened them to the game, right? I say, listen, like this is an open and competitive energy market. You no longer need a buyer of your gas, right? Like the Bitcoin network is this autonomous consumer of energy or power. The rate is non-negotiable, right? So like what you get per unit is non-negotiable, and it's it's relatively volatile, but it's varying. But there's no counterparty risk. It will always be there to give you greater than zero reward for your energy. And it was pre-programmed, right? Like it was programmed in 2009 to reward you for your energy in 2070.
And you get paid instantly. You don't have to
almost yeah. It's pretty close to instantly. And you get, you get paid and you can sell it, regardless of geography. And like geography is the inherent issue with stranded gas, right?
What's the payback time for the product they're there for? So let's say you pull a barrel of oil out of the ground. So you've got this barrel of oil. When do you get it? When did this check clear the bank for that oil?
For the barrel, oil is, well, I'll put it this way, like they're taxed the moment it comes out of the ground. That's how certain the government is that it's, like the second it goes into your battery, into your tank, like, because I did production accounting, like that's the number you're getting hit on. But it's sold the moment that a pumper comes and picks it up, right? Which, by the way, though, it's kind of crazy, antiquated how that works. Like a guy with a big truck comes and they have what are called seals on the tank, and it's got like a like a big long number, like a seal number, and you actually strap the tank. So you measure the cylinder, because sometimes, like a truck backed into the tank and made a dent. And so like then the level of oil will change the total volume of the oil in the tank if the tank is dented. So you got to strap your tank every now and again. And then, like, again, our software did this where you type it, you input the tank strappings. And then depending upon how high the oil is in that tank tells you how many barrels or how many, gallons, liters, barrels. And then the truck comes up and he breaks the seal. He measures what the oil was when he arrived. He breaks the seal, fills up his truck, and then he puts a new seal on and he measures the amount of oil, like the level of oil when he leaves. And he has a number, you have a number, and everybody settles on like how much oil did we just sell? And it's like, I mean, it's, oil is so like there's no concern that nobody's going to buy it. We'll put it that way. It's much like almost like Bitcoin in that regard, because the demand is so
high. They get paid pretty quickly then. I mean, that night.
I think it's a lot of times they settle monthly, depending on the volume, I think. But like they settle either monthly or maybe weekly with whoever their contract pumpers are and things. So it's not as streaming as Bitcoin mining is, but it's pretty high frequency, I guess. Nothing is like high frequency as Bitcoin. I mean, it's almost like minutes a minute, right?
Yeah.
But enlightening them to this technology, I mean, it's not often that they're put off. Like oftentimes they're very skeptical from the beginning of the call, right? They have a lot of questions, like, and I always tell them, like, there's no stupid questions here, right? Like, don't have any pride about asking me very basic things. A lot of times their questions are around things like, how do I turn this into dollars? Like, how do I act how do I get money in my bank account from this? Step me through that, right? Because it's like, it's because that's foreign to them. And so when I tell them, I'm like, it's very, like, you set this up once and then you can pretty much just have it automated. Like going forward, you can just, like you get to a certain balance on your mining pool, it'll shoot it to a wallet. You could have that wallet be like, a Swan or a River account, right? And then you just log into that thing every, once a week or something and hit market sell, withdraw to your bank account, go on with your day. And you don't, like, it'll just happen. I was like, plus all the accounting is taken care of by the Bitcoin blockchain. Right? Like it's a natural, like that's all the Bitcoin network does is it accounts for itself every 10 minutes, right? It's just constantly accounting for itself. So yeah, it's very easy to audit, so long as you don't like get weird, about it. But you can also do really cool things like, oftentimes they have partners or, royalty owners, whatever. Like you can disseminate that, right? Like you could, with a lot of these mining pools, you can like have your primary mining pool account, and then you could say like push 4.5% of the earnings to this mining pool account. And then you could have a different Bitcoin address for that one, and then put 15% over here. And you could set up addresses for everybody. And then you don't even have to like send them Bitcoin or send them money. It'll just naturally get distributed. And once they reach a threshold, it'll withdraw to those addresses that, other people, so if people are on a relative, are okay accepting Bitcoin as their payment, it can be, incredibly automated and then just kind of hands off. And then you have, protection and kind of like deniability, like, hey, I didn't accidentally send your money to the wrong thing. Like, this is, you gave me the address, like, and then you can go back and look, yeah, you were paid on this date and this date, right? So like all this stuff is very new to them though.
Oh, okay. So how many of these have you closed, or not you, but to say the company have wellheads or people y'all working with?
We've shipped a lot of Bitcoin mines to North America, like, and it's like many hundreds.
What does it look like? Is it like within 140-foot HQ CCAN, or is it multiple, or
even smaller? Like our 90, like our 180 kilowatt, which is a 13-liter inline six turbo. It's actually like I think it's an engine that's rated for like 210 kVE. We intentionally oversize them because it's appropriate to do so. I want to say that's like 10 by 20, 10 by 16. Off the top of my head, yeah.
It's like half a CCAN, roughly.
Yeah, like one of the small, like a CCAN's usually like 8 feet, right? Like 8 feet wide, so it's like 8 feet by 40 is like So
Yeah.
you can, it's like 8 by 8 by 40 or something like that. Ours are like 9.5 feet tall. Because
Right.
we don't use shipping containers as our standard product. We
Ah,
we have an intentional design. So like our Bitcoin mines that don't have an engine, they're modular. They're 10 feet, and they start 10 feet by 4 feet, 10 feet by like 4.5 feet, and then they just get deeper, right? So like a 180 kilowatts, 10 feet by 4.5 feet by 9.5 feet tall, and then the 360s 10 by 8, right? And then the 720s 10 by 16. And then the 900s 10 by 20, and then we've got a 1.36 megawatt I think it's 10 by 32, right? So, and like that's it gives us a little bit more room. Like 10 feet wide gives you a little bit more aisle space, more surface area, so better airflow. And still, it's like the way Barber designs, he like put it right on the limit to where it can be shipped around, and it doesn't need like a pilot vehicle for like an oversized load, because that makes it, then there's only so many roads it can drive on, and it's so much, it's a lot more costly to freight or transport it. So like he designs it like like within these parameters, like up to the centimeter,
right. Me too.
So yeah, like, and like we've iterated a lot, right? Like Steve has, him and I've talked often about this. Like I'm obsessed with air cooling. I think that at the end of the day, everything's air cooled, right? Like oftentimes people don't think about this, but even if you're water cooling or immersed, like you have an immersion system going, well, you have the computers immersed in a dielectric fluid, and then you're running that fluid to a radiator, like, to a zigzagging pipes, and you're blowing a fan on it, right? So you're just going from computer to liquid, and then you're taking the heat that's in the liquid and putting it in the air. So like everything's air cooled at the end of the day anyway. So I always look at, like, I've always kind of thought, and I still do today, that the majority of Bitcoin mining, I'm not sure if it'll be the majority of hash rate, but I think the majority of nominal units deployed will always be air cooled, right? Especially the further away from the equator you get, right? The more pragmatic it is, the more temperate the climate, because it's just always going to be the lowest cost, the most capital efficient way to mine Bitcoin. It's always going to just require less infrastructure, less complex design, because you're just adding. You're still air cooling when you do water immersion. You're just adding these steps in the middle in order to try to gain this marginal efficiency, right? Which it does, right? Like it's certainly like immersion, where you have every surface of the computer in contact with a liquid, which is obviously more dense than air. You're able to transfer more BTUs per cubic inch of material or space. But then at the end of the day, you still have to have an appropriately sized, what they call a dry cooler or a radiator, to cool that liquid and recycle it in. And so like that's still a variable. Like that's still a part of the design, is air cooling. It's like, you can't escape air cooling. Like it's inevitable.
It's still there.
Yeah,
I mean, it does
inevitable.
a little better, but you still have to eventually use air to pull it off the other side.
Exactly. Like, and that just can't be avoided. So Steve and I've talked about it a lot, and he's got a much better mind for, engineering and design, mechanical engineering, and he considers things that I don't. But I think, I think I add something to the discussion oftentimes. Like the black box product that we have was something that I find really cool, because, I was very skeptical. So it's a passively cooled product, which means it doesn't have any fans on it. Like there's no forced air. It just uses the fans that are on the Bitcoin miner themselves are what cool the miner. It's really just like an enclosure. It's a housing for Bitcoin miners. Allows you to put them outside and all weather. It's a very, very fire resistant. And it ultimately is like allowed. Oh, are you gone? Did Craig just disappear on me? Oh, I think he's calling me. This is hilarious. Look at that. There he is.
We're back.
That was hilarious. I was in the middle of talking. All of a sudden, it just went to my screen, and I was like, if we're live and people are watching this, like, I'm just stuck here by myself. I almost just went on a diatribe, and I was like, no, I won't do that to Craig. I won't, just start spewing politics or something. But anyway, the black box is something that we made, like, primarily was for retail. So, like, the first one we deployed was just like for 2 miners. And it was something I begged Steve for since honestly, like, him and I first started talking. I the way I phrased it was, I was like, I need a backyard hash hut, right? Like, and I was like, I want it to be, just for a few miners. It could be up to 4 or 6 maybe. And I was like, if it could be all weather and dampen the sound, like, my parents have a few acres and they have an unused electrical panel. Like, I need this, and he was so focused on our primary oil field products. He was like, nah, like, just, kind of hand shook it off. And then he put out a Twitter poll a couple, I think in early 2021 or mid 2021, he's like, if I designed an enclosure for home miners to dampen the sound, allow you to put it outside, would you be interested in that? And like it was like the post that he got the most, impressions and engagement that he's ever posted. And like,
wow,
very, very clearly people were like, yes. And so, I mean, I wonder if I can pull up the picture, but he was like at lunch and he like just sketched out a design on his take home box, like, the take home food carrier, and snapped a picture of it and like sent it to our engineering team. And he was like, could you guys build a prototype of this? This is what it looks like. This is going to be the approximate size. And then we did a pre-sale, and him and I like talked a lot about this, like about the pre-sale. And like, at the end of the day, we were like, worst case, it's kind of a fun product to build for people that aren't normally our customers, right? But people that are in Bitcoin and that, we engage with, that know the company. And if we only get a few orders, it'll be a fun kind of like marketing deal. We won't make a lot of money, but we'll build a cool product. It'll be fun to take pictures and share them around. And the pre-sale just exploded. Like, we got like 50 times more orders than we ever expected. And then I didn't sleep for like 3 weeks because I had to, process all of those orders effectively manually, because we didn't have it's not like we had a very sophisticated like web store set up where people could just go like add to cart and click, and like it was very manual kind of direct communication. And so I just didn't sleep. And
problem to have.
Yeah, it was a fun problem to have. But like all of a sudden now it was like, crap, we've got to build like hundreds of boxes for all these people. And we told everybody, I think it was like end of March of the next year, we would get the boxes. The thing that we've been principled on as a company, and Steve and I are, I'm in very much agreement with Barber on this, is prepaying for Bitcoin miners, like for the ASICs, the servers, is like an interest-free loan, right? Like, these are money printers, and they're always priced at like an interval of their future earnings. They're usually like 180 to 350 days of their earnings, depending upon the market and the model. But that's like how they're priced. And so, to give somebody $5,000 today for a computer that's going to be delivered in 10 months, and like with Bitcoin's price volatility, it's just not it's not appropriately priced when people do that, right? Like, the discount should be insane if you're pre-ordering, in my opinion. Like, you should get like an 80% discount if you're doing something like that. But sometimes you don't even get a discount, right? It's like, I guess, it's the market is what it is. But that was something, that's something we weren't going to do. So we were like, a lot of these we bundled with like S19J Pros and What's miners. And so everybody got their computers right away, right? That was the thing. We were like, if you bought computers with your box, like those are going to deliver within 21 days. The box, we're going to hit the end of March. And I think we were late on like a dozen boxes, right? So like we didn't fully hit our goal, our target. If I'm going to be completely honest here, there was maybe a dozen boxes that spilled over.
How many?
Into April. Like over 150.
Wow.
There was a lot. Yeah, there was a lot of boxes. Yeah. Well, I mean, it was way more than we thought. Like him and I were talking about, we're like, maybe 25 or something, and then they just like just, I mean, my DMs, my Telegram, my everything was just exploding and we did it right on Bitcoin white paper day, right on Halloween of 2021. And I think I started sleeping like November 13th. Like I finally got back to bed. It was nuts. It was a lot of fun, but it was like very intense, and and especially ASICs, those are like a high risk item, because we weren't like making money on the computers. It was really like we were just helping guys get those, and we were working with certified like Bitmain distributors, if you will. But a lot of the times they're across an ocean, and they like demand payment at the time of order in Bitcoin, and it's like if we send them a bunch of money and they don't send the computers, like what's our recourse here? Like, are we going to fly to Asia? And like, how do we find, you know what I mean? And like, and then it's going to destroy our reputation. So like we had to try to manage that. And that was, took a lot of diligence and patience, and I was on the side of like, let's be insanely, like, it'd be better to get guys their stuff a little bit late than to not get them anything at all. You know what I mean? Like, let's look, what's the risk reward here? And at the end of the day, it actually went quite smooth. Like I mean, it took a lot of work, but we got it done. And the black box is a great product. Like, I mean, I've got a couple of them running out. They've been out in Colorado for almost like maybe 34 months now, 33 months or something like that.
Wow.
And running great. Like what's crazy is I don't see my computers for like months and months at a time. Right. Like they just run. Like that's weird. Like anybody that is a home miner, that's insane. Right. Like it's very unusual. Like you always at least hear them, right? Or you check on them. Like I literally don't check. Sometimes I get a ping from the pool and it says like, your unit went down. Often if it's snowing a lot, because I'm using satellite internet and the dish gets packed with snow and then it loses internet. So the miner goes down, and and then once the snow melts off the dish, the thing just reconnects. And so, I don't do anything. I just hands off.
Now, one thing I wanted to get from you before we get too close to the end or anything, I wanted you to kind of give your personal rant on supporting oil and gas as an energy resource, because I know it gets so beat up in the media and people don't realize, they're not as close to the well as you are understanding. Guys, if you rug pull oil and gas from the planet, we are in dire straits here. Careful what you wish for, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So give people an insight into that.
Well, I'll start high level and then I'll kind of go down. Like, I think when you say, people aren't as close to it as I am, I would push back and just a little bit and say, certainly everybody in North America or United States, Canada is just as close to it as I am, because we are all very comfortable. Certainly nobody listening to this stream is any further away from oil and gas than their monitor is to their face, right? Like the device you're holding, the electricity, the battery inside the device, the servers that are processing this video content and passing it to devices all over. It's all petroleum products, right? And even if it's not a direct petroleum product, it is ancillary. Like it's dependent upon petroleum within its production process, within its supply chain. And so, I'm a human I'm a human flourishing maximalist. I'm not. I say on Twitter, right, I'm a hydrocarbon maximalist. I mean, what I mean, I think that's synonymous with I want humanity to prosper. Back to one of your earliest points on when we started talking, right? Like you were talking about being able to discriminate on what method you use to generate electricity is a first world luxury.
Yeah.
That is, that is kind of the epitome of my point of view, which is I'm not endowed with any intelligence. I don't ever want to dictate how anybody else uplifts themselves out of poverty or increases their quality of life. I think whatever is available to them and whatever makes the most sense, people will act in their own best interest. And like whatever it is that helps you generate power and increase your quality of life, do it. I think that that's a good thing. I think the only way we have a world without oil and gas is if we have a world without human beings. Like that's, if you want, like the Just Stop Oil people, they might as well, change their name to Just Stop Humanity, in my opinion. Right? Like that. The bottom line is humans demand to have, to be comfortable from the elements, right? Like trying building a house without oil and gas, like anywhere in the supply chain of what you do, right? Like, well, one, you're going to have to cut down like forests, and you're going to have to do it by hand with something other than steel, right? At least if you don't want to have any hydrocarbons, right? Like very high grade steel is a product of coal. So, do you want the bridges you drive on to be just made out of wood? Like, should we just start deforesting more? Like, that's what a lot of people don't understand is, oil and gas displace a lot of other less efficient and more environmentally destructive processes like deforesting, whale oil.
Whale industry. That's the one that came to mind.
It's a big one. But you can either consume living carbon or you can consume dead carbon. Like coal is nature's battery. So is, I would argue, so is petroleum. So is natural gas. It's carbon life forms, really algae and plankton and things from long ago that were buried under insane amounts of pressure and, accumulated. And so it's like deforesting the past, like not rather than, and the only, if you're going to be fixated on carbon dioxide, which I think is foolish regardless, but it's kind of another discussion. But even if you are going to be fixated on that, like the last thing you want to do is destroy the only carbon sinks we have, which is plant life, right? Like trees. But I mean, shit, the amount of carbon dioxide that every year seasonal grass dies and releases like 75 times more carbon dioxide than human beings generate, like, wow. Like I exhaust carbon dioxide for God's sake. So like, do people just see me as pollution? Like, is that how we're going to start viewing humanity? So,
yeah, but you're anti-human.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So like really what I want people to try and do, and we talked about this a lot. I was on a panel at Mining Disrupt with Troy Cross and Colin Fraxlap, Colin from Digital Wildcatters. And we, as the four of us discussed these topics at length even before our panel. And the bottom line that we all came to was like, the world should be focusing more on one, we should try to uplift everybody's energy IQ, but we should focus on like trying to figure out what is the optimal stack, right? Like everything kind of has its place. I think wind is not like, there's very few places where I think wind makes sense. It's certainly not offshore everywhere. Right. Very few places, but I think this, the best, what is the best energy stack? Like what is the best power generation stack? And I think that whatever it is for maybe Colorado is different than what it is for El Salvador or what it is for, Chile or, Cuba. So that should be the focus, is how do we optimize this and get there? One of the biggest problems and something that echoes Bitcoin's, thesis and core is when you can create money at no cost, when money is created at no cost, no input, it distorts markets entirely, right? It's so hard to find signal, right? Like go out and tweet, what is the cheapest way to produce energy? And you'll get 1,000 people, coming from all different angles that are 100% confident they've got oh no, it's solar. No, it's wind. No, it's nuclear. No, it's natural gas. It's coal. And the bottom line is nobody fucking knows, because we can't, it's like, well, actually solar is the cheapest if you're friends with this guy and he's close to the money printer and you get these kickbacks because you're a part of this JP Morgan initiative where they're going to have these green stock, like then this is the cheapest. But it's the money printer distorts the market and it's so hard to find signal. It's very difficult to figure out what actually is efficient. Like, what is capital efficient? What is thermodynamically efficient? Like we were talking on stage and they were talking about these coal plants being shut down in Canada being replaced with, I think, natural gas or nuclear. And, they, like we were talking about markets and I stopped and I was like, but hold on. Like, did those coal plants shut down because they weren't profitable? Like, was it, they just, damn it, just coal can't compete anymore these days? No, that wasn't it. It's because some mafia known as a government came in and said, we're going to make you not profitable. We're going to penalize you out of business.
Send it to ground.
And the oil and gas industry is feeling it all over. Like, Colorado is killing the oil and gas industry, death by a million cuts. And so really what I would encourage people to do is, one is take some time to uplift your own energy IQ and learn a little bit about oil and gas, like hydrocarbons, figure out how everything around us is.
Any good resources for that?
Oh man, I would just say, like, just don't just ask ChatGPT. That's all I would say. Yeah. Like, do some thorough, put on your investigative journalism hat. But if you are going to use ChatGPT, like, ask some questions like, can a battery be produced without petroleum? Because I've asked, Grok and ChatGPT and all these AIs these questions, and they can't help but admit the truth. They're like, well, while there are some batteries that don't directly need to use certain, ultimately, petroleum is abundant throughout the entirety of the supply chain for a battery, from the mining to the refining to the transporting to the manufacturing and delivery, and it's like, there you go, right? So, like, slapping a battery on something doesn't just make it net zero or all of a sudden like virtuous and good for the planet. It's it doesn't a battery doesn't displace oil and gas, right? Like, it's a product of it. So same thing with a wind turbine and a solar panel. So, like, in other words, beer can't obsolete wheat, right? Beer is dependent on wheat. It's a product of wheat. The product can never obsolete its ingredient. And that's, that'd be like saying, like, Bitcoin is going to obsolete the internet. It's like, kind of hold on. Like, Bitcoin is kind of like a product of the internet. Like, how
right.
You know what I mean?
So
yeah. And then the other side of it is, it does not, in a very realistic and kind of pragmatic sense, a lot of this, like, renewables, what I would call intermittent or unreliable power gen, like solar and wind, it actually doesn't displace, like, the use of natural gas or coal at the grid level, because for every megawatt of solar you deploy, you have to back it up with reliable natural gas or coal, or right. So because
some battery or something.
Yeah, because it might be cloudy, and right. So, like, you need to, in order to justify that capacity, you got to, like, you need to have the gas plant at least there and ready. And if it's sunny, you're like, it's like, we don't necessarily need to fire up the turbine. But if it's not, then nobody, you're not going to just let the market go without power. See, I think solar, personally, just a little tidbit is, I think solar is amazing at the point of consumption, right? Like, at the individual level, what a kick-ass thing, right? It's like just a film that takes the sun's heat energy. The sun requires no maintenance, and it turns it into power for yourself. That's awesome. At the industrial scale, it's, in my opinion, I think it should only be if it's any piece of the stack, it should only be a very small, like, less than 10%, maybe less than 15% of the stack, because otherwise people have to coordinate. It's like, I don't want to have to coordinate with my neighbors when I can turn my dryer on and when I can, use my oven. But at the individual level, I can coordinate with my family, like, when we should, how we should use power, because we're using solar. Like, if the grid goes down, then it's very easy for me to control my, my little microcosm, my household, and coordinate with them. But to coordinate with the neighborhood or coordinate with the city, it's impractical and it's communistic, right?
Yeah, I don't see solar working without. I don't even know why people say solar without saying solar and battery, because it's almost the technology.
Well, batteries suck. Like, they're so costly. Batteries are so costly. Now, I just saw a bunch of people tweeting today about how the costs are going down, and it's like, are they? Do we actually know what the cost to produce a battery is? Because we have the money printer, and beyond that, we have, like, ridiculously unlimited subsidization and random cherry picking of winners, like do we actually know what it costs to produce a battery? Because I don't know if we do, right? Like, I mean, in turn, I don't know if we know what it costs to to build a natural gas plant, really, because I'm sure there's nonsense in there as well. But I think what the most recent bill that Biden signed, I think there was like 360 or $400 billion dedicated to renewable infrastructure or green.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like the energy transition, which is not, I mean, yeah. I mean, I'll bet, I'll bet my net worth that petroleum isn't going anywhere in my lifetime. Like whoever wants to take me up on that bet, like honestly, 30 years, like I'll bet you 10 coins, that oil and gas is still a massive industry come 2050. Right.
Well, I think the bet there is contingent upon every year we need more and more energy from every possible way we can make energy.
Bingo.
That's
right. And like, meanwhile, you look at like China. I mean, China's building on average, it's like 2.2 industrial scale coal fire plants per week. Right. And this is like new tech. This isn't like old coal fire plants, like they have very sophisticated, Donald Trump would call it clean coal, right? And honestly, like the coal fire technology we have these days is incredibly clean. Like it's not like there's like black smut everywhere, like it's not. It's incredible. And if you look at like just the energy density, my God, I mean, there's a reason that commercial airlines are not battery powered. Okay, it's because kerosene is 48 times more energy dense than a lithium ion battery. Now, an electric battery is about twice as efficient going to a motor than kerosene is. Okay, so then it's 24 times more energy dense, even if you want to account for that efficiency aspect, right? Like electricity is very efficient combusting, and kerosene, there's thermal loss. It's still 24 times. That means, a lithium ion battery is 4% the energy density of kerosene. Really, it's 2%, but even aggregated out or compensated, it's only maybe 4%. So we have like lithium ion batteries need to get 25 times more energy dense in order to compete. Like, that'd be like, this battery being like your phone battery being able to last, 45 days.
Yeah, they've got a long way as far as making it smaller and lighter.
Big bridge. It's a big gap to bridge. Like that's.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying it's unbridgeable. I mean, the technological innovation, some kind of material process advancement unforeseen or something. Maybe the military already has. Who knows? But there also is like thermodynamic law at play here, and it's really tough to beat the energy density of hydrocarbons. I mean, they are incredible. Again, think about it, the Lewis and Clark example. It's like with $100 of gasoline, you can pretty much make their journey, maybe $150 of gasoline and, a Ford Expedition, you can make their journey in like a few days, what took them 28 months, I think, right? Now, that's
what do you have?
amazing.
What do you have planned for the future? Are you going to Nashville or what?
Yeah, I'm going to be in Nashville. One of our head programmers,
you'll have a booth have like
no, we're not gonna have a booth.
Attending as a regular.
Yeah, I'm gonna just attend as a pleb. Again, stay humble. I'm nobody special in this space. I really I'm passionate about what we do. One of our we have a really kick-ass guy on our team named Brett Rowan. He's a good friend of mine, and he developed our load sync controller. So our Bitcoin mines, it's kind of like firmware for your building. For your Bitcoin mine, it allows you to automate like the fan speed of the building. It allows you to automate the Bitcoin miners with your engine. So if if the gas flow to your engine starts to diminish and the RPM is dropping down, it'll start cycling down Bitcoin miners so that your engine, will consume all the gas available. And then as more gas becomes available, it'll slowly bring Bitcoin miners back online. So it's a way to automate the curtailment at the wellhead level. So really cool software product that we've developed for, it's built off of PyAsic, which is an open source miner management tool that Brett Rowan authored and developed. And so I think he's on a panel at Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville. I've got there's a lot of events at Bitcoin Park. I was talking with Rod from Bitcoin Park.
Oh yeah,
super awesome guy.
Great guy.
Yeah, I love Rod.
He's has Airbnb right behind his house a couple times.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people in the Bitcoin space. Like he flew me out to Nashville when he had the idea of the Bitcoin Park, and he just wanted my input. And the building that he acquired, it used to be a recording studio for Georgia Florida Line, I think. So it had all this massive power, and so he was wanted me to give my input on could we mine here? So we built them some black boxes, and they operate them there. And he shared with me his whole vision. And I always the way I tell it is I became more bullish on his Bitcoin Park vision than he was. He was again, he was sober and thought about it. And I was when he shared all with me, I was dude, this is going to be fucking awesome. You're going to, I think it was 2020, 2021? He paid for me to fly down. He bought me a plane ticket, picked me up at the airport, just because he wanted my input. He wanted me to, he's any way, you'd be willing to help, please. And I was dude, I will help you. You name it. You will not be bothering me. So I'm a huge bull on Bitcoin Park. I've always, thought that it was a really cool idea. The messed up part is that I think a lot of people will try to duplicate it. Let me see. I think it was August of 2021.
Yeah.
I think I was just looking back. So, people try to duplicate it, and not everybody is Rod. Right. That's the problem.
And not every city's Nashville. Let me tell you.
That's another great point. And my God, he has done a kick-ass job. Those are my favorite event this year to date so far, and I think it'll hold true, was the mining event at Bitcoin Park in January. I was a very small part of that, a very small speaker. I was on a panel, but yeah, it was January January 2024. Yeah, it was.
I missed that one. I heard all about it. I was supposed to go.
It's the perfect size, right? It was I want to say it was a couple hundred people. Whatever the capacity of those that building is, those two buildings. And so it was intimate enough that I had a lot of great conversations with folks and collaborated, but enough people that you get everybody there that, you kind of want there, everybody should be relevant and everybody that wants to come. I imagine it's already at the point where he's got to say no to a lot of people because
it was packed.
It's limited. Right? I told him, I kept telling him when I was there in January, I was so when are you going to buy that? It's a school that's right next to them or something, or a church.
Yeah,
I was when are you going to buy that? Let's just move down the block. Just keep buying. Let's have the whole fucking street, by 2030, it'll be, Bitcoin block. It'll be a whole freaking city block that we own. And he's always been just talk about somebody who's low time preference, right? I really respect and admire the way that Rod went about, doing this. He had a very long-term vision. He wasn't looking about getting an ROI by the end of the year or any of that shit. He was on the mission,
Yeah, he's here for
it was it was a real estate play with a Bitcoin play with a social aspect, and he delivered. He's created immense amount of value there, and so big props to him.
Yeah.
Are you going to be in Nashville?
Yeah, I'll definitely be there. I'll be at the meetup table for those that are looking for the whole Bitcoin Daily crowd. I think only our two hosts that are in El Salvador won't be able to make this one. They really they couldn't pull it off, but
so who are the other hosts?
So Brad and Matt do our Brad James.
Yeah, okay, Brad James, okay.
And then Matt, oh my gosh, we call him Macro Minutes. What is Matt's last name?
Oh, I know. I know Macro Minutes. I know Matt.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know him very well personally, but I know of him. So
yeah, dude's a hell of a rower. He's a nationally ranked rower. He's going to nationals.
That doesn't surprise me. It's in the Bitcoin space. In the Bitcoin space, it's very,
Yeah, it's
common. I've competed nationally in billiards, strangely enough. Like I think it's like Bitcoin attracts, people that are rigorous competitors, rigorous, doers in life, at least early on. At some point it'll attract everyone. But
my one claim to fame was I was ranked number 3 in partner stunt nationals.
Really?
For cheerleading. That was how that's how I went to college.
Just throwing women around,
throwing girls up in the air. I was pretty good at it.
Throwing those like 90-pound women just line, and then they all clap for her like you get no praise. She's like the talent, right? And you're just this freaking dude that happens to be doing all the work. I love it. I mean, they do a lot. Like it's pretty sweet how they like are able to stand on the palm of your hand and shit. But
oh yeah, it's like
you're like 80% of it. If I had to give a ratio, you're like maybe 76 to 85% of the work there.
We just tell them hold still, don't do anything. Let me do the work.
Before we quit, I gotta know, like, did you do that in high school?
Was
that your plan? Like, so how do I hang out with all these women?
No, it was.
I'm gonna throw them around.
And then I did javelin. I actually had a collegiate scholarship for javelin.
No shit.
My senior year, a friend of mine a girl recruited me and said, "Look, we need some guys on the cheerleading squad. I heard you're not going to do wrestling this year. Why don't you just come try out?"
And were you like, okay, like how good looking is the squad?
Yeah, they were all.
Of course. I mean, if it's like college cheerleaders, it's like that's almost a prerequisite to the deal. So like,
yeah, 1 year I did 1 year in high school, and then after that, I got a scholarship to University of Kentucky.
You got was it like a full ride or something?
It was the biggest scholarship you can possibly imagine. It was full in-state, out-of-state, room and board, books, spending money. I've never seen a scholarship. They've won like 20 national titles in cheerleading in the last 22 years or something. They don't.
I thought you were going to talk about national titles in like other sports, and I was like, yeah, like you get serious competitors, obviously, like basketball, being a big one.
No, just in cheerleading.
But in cheerleading, they're like, so like that's like going to like Alabama for football kind of a thing.
Yeah, If Alabama lost 2 years of the last 20, that would be the equivalent. I think Kentucky wins every single.
That's like going to the Patriots after their like 18th Super Bowl or whatever. Okay, that's nuts.
Yeah,
that's got to be the most rigorous like cheerleading squad to get on, right? Like that's got to be the most competitive, most difficult.
Yeah, there's 20 guys dying to take your place on JV squad.
Oh, there's 25,000 guys dying to have your job in the stands. I mean, you get to hang out with beautiful women and like practice with them, and you get a full ride for it. Like that's kick ass. Like I've never had any. There's people that would like try to make fun of dudes in the cheerleading and stuff, and I was always like, man, I think that they're smarter than us. Like I think like they've got to figure. They don't even have to get tackled and stuff. They don't have to get concussions and. Like, this is an easy game. It was so much
smaller. Like my javelin scholarship was like $1,000 or $2,000 a semester. And it was
throwing javelins, throwing women. Like 10 times more valuable. That's hilarious.
Take the cheerleading scholarship. It was
how big are you? How tall are you?
I'm 5'11". At the time I was like right at 205. And so, now I'm like 225. But we had to tumble. So
yeah, of course. Yeah, like you had to tumble. Like
they sent us
back handsprings are a bitch. I've done them before.
Oh, we had to do back handspring backs, back tucks, layouts.
Yeah, I couldn't do a back handspring to a back tuck. I never got to that point.
They sent us to the Kentucky gymnastics team, and their coach would coach us. And many of us had no gymnastics background, so we're literally learning gymnastics.
Ooh, yeah, like I did like gymnastics as like a younger kid. It was like something that my parents threw me into because it's like great for all sports, right? It's like great with coordination and flexibility and strength. And there were some parts about it that like I love the trampoline, like I freaking loved that.
That's cool.
But like tumbling, I wasn't cut to be like the gymnast guys, but like, man, those are some of the absolute top tier athletes in the world of all the sports. Like, but right there with like swimmers, like they're
amazing.
My God, they're in insane shape. Like, and it might be one of the sports where in certain respects, the women are actually dominate over the men.
Yeah, so the men are super tiny. So if you ever see a male gymnast, they're like little small.
Yeah, they're often they're like jockeys. They're not often like over 5'7", 5'8". Like that's the limit. But like I will say the men's high bar routines are nuts.
Yeah.
And I in the Olympics I watched the trampoline competition. It's like that white trampoline, and they're getting like 35 feet off the freaking tramp mat. Like they're doing like quadruple backflips. I don't know if you've ever seen Olympic trampoline. It is not. There's like I think there's like double tramp, and then there's like the single one, and it's like the way like they have like this technique of like really like reverberating your energy, and it is. I mean, it's so suspenseful. They're freaking 7, 8, people off the ground, like, and they're just like spinning, and then they hit the tram, and they're going the other way. It's like, my God, like this is more intense than dirt biking.
They do. They have spatial awareness to where they know where they are all the time. When I was tumbling, I used muscle memory because when I would go upside down, I would know where the ground was. And so I had to just memorize it in my body.
Like trust your instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and I've seen it. My sisters were really good gymnasts. I've seen them. Like one time a guy was running across the floor when they were tumbling and my sister stopped. And I was like, how did you see it? And like, she like caught him out of the corner of her eye and like controlled it. I was like, how did you just stop on a dime to not hit that guy like that?
The good ones know. They see it all.
No, that's wild. I mean, that's a really cool story. We should have talked more about that. I can't believe you got a full ride Louisville throwing women in cheerleading, man. Plus it had to be fun to go out. You got to travel to all the sporting events. You got to like be a VIP on the field, or did you primarily do like basketball or football or what?
So we did Kentucky basketball and football, both. And then we would fly with the team. The alumni would actually, I probably shouldn't say this, but they would make sure we had some money to spend.
Oh, I mean, that's a big secret. They're freaking giving players fucking Mercedes and shit. I mean, come on. Like that, that's no secret. There's documentaries on that.
Right. And then while the other football players were studying, watching videos, we were out partying with the hosting teams.
Of course.
They would take us a great time.
My God. I think I might have to, if I am blessed to have a son later in life, I might have to sell him on this deal. Son, don't be a running back. There's no reason to turn your brain to mush by the time you're 30. Like, do some gymnastics, throw some women. That's the ticket.
That's the free ride.
I mean, work smarter, not harder. Jeez, that's freaking genius, man. I mean, props to you. I had a very small like baseball offering to like a D3 or D2 school.
That's hard.
Like, I mean, yeah, I was pretty damn good at like I had a good on base average and I was good in the field. I didn't have that strong of an arm, but I was a good middle infielder. I was like a better second baseman than a shortstop, but just because my arm was like 90 feet was like the distance I could throw it hard. Like after that, I wasn't an outfielder. But I was like, I don't want to spend that much time and that much practicing like for $2,000. I was like, fuck that noise. Like that's a lot of work for very little, and the likelihood of injury and the travel time and what it takes away from your academics. And, I was like, and they had all these stipulations about, your grades and your attendance. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to be an MLB player. I know myself. I'm not playing in the major leagues. I think I'll go play those beer leagues. Yeah. I'm not making it to the show. But I will, I'll do intramurals and shit. Like I'm a competitive person. So, I played football, baseball, and basketball in high school. So I played all three sports. It was.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and like you said, there's so much of that in Bitcoin. I was telling people the other day, I was like, this is the most well put together group of people I've ever worked with. And they're so surprising at other things that they're great at that have nothing to do with Bitcoin.
It's like all the people who
and I love it. Now practically nothing but red meat, and my energy is out the ceiling.
Oh, exactly, man. It's like, well, and I happen to grow up that way. My parents were like keto diet people, I can't remember what it was called back in the day. Maybe like the Atkins diet or something like, it was like as many like fruits and vegetables as you want, but like your meals are just protein, like no breads, no grains kind of thing. that was like, my parents raised me that way, and I was fortunate to have pretty much home cooked meals all the time. Like, it's very rare that we ordered or ate out. Yeah, like I think about it now, and I'm like seriously, I tweeted about this the other day. I was like, cook food, like healthy food for your family, not just healthy, but like real food for your family, because you'll save their fucking life. Yeah. Like, if you look at the rates of cancers, the cancers and diabetes and all these like terrible diseases and, you know, cardiac issues amongst 12 to 24-year-olds, they're like, it's like 600% higher today than it was in early 2000s. Right. Yeah. And like a lot of, it's all processed foods and seed oils and just really very, you know, empty, hollow kind of chemical, you know, processed food. If you can like keep them from that, you could truly save their life. Like, you know, because you have no idea how somebody's predisposed. But beyond that, the way I put it one time was like, Bitcoin is this thing that gave all the people who just naturally keep to themselves, like they're typically like individualists, you know, they don't ask other people for help very often. Maybe they're prideful a little bit about it, but like regardless, they're like self-sufficient, and they kind of keep to themselves socially. They're not, you know, they don't get their own self-worth from others' opinions. It gave all those people a reason to be social. Right. Like, it gave all of us a reason to like actually get together and talk. Whereas normally we probably would just like, you know, we wouldn't even be out on the internet, like putting too many ideas to battle, because we're like, well, fuck those people that are wrong. They're wrong. Like, I don't need to,
Bitcoin.
You know.
I wouldn't be on Twitter. And
hell no. No. If you'd have asked me in beginning of 2018, like, will you ever tweet? I'd have been like, no, that's stupid. Yeah. Like,
would you be an influencer? I'm like, hell no.
No.
I can't believe people do.
No, like I just, every article I kept reading about Bitcoin, it kept linking me to Twitter, and it kept saying, well, there was this post, and I'm like, I guess I should probably make an account on here. This is where Bitcoin lives. Yeah. And so I finally did it. Like, it was begrudgingly that I came. And then all of a sudden, like me and Dylan LeClaire talk about this all the time, because him and I used to DM back in 2018 when we both had like 20 followers. And we were DMing, and like, you know, we were screaming at nobody, just screaming at the sky. And then now Dylan's like super famous in the financial space, and like,
yeah, he's doing great.
Oh, he's like a super influential in that way. And I mean, shit, the fact that anybody, you know, would ask my opinion on these things, like the becoming an expert or any of that that was never on my mind. I was just obsessed with a good idea. You know, I was just like so obsessed with disrupting energy production, obsessed with how Bitcoin integrated with oil and gas. And I just happened to be a little bit early, you know, like I was just relatively pretty damn early, and talking about it when I was talking about it when nobody had thought about it. Steve Barber was doing it when nobody else had thought about it. Like in 2016, he was actually like in the oil field fucking doing it before anybody else had thought about it. And, you know, then all of a sudden later people start thinking about it, it becomes sexy, and they go and search Twitter, and all they see is like me screaming at the sky. And like, I go back and look at some of my tweets about it, like ones that I put like a lot of work into, and they have like 2 likes. Like these, like, you know, I like broke down the numbers, and it's like 2 people liked it. It's like, fuck.
I just now got on Twitter. So I got on last year, I don't know, middle of last year. And but it was the only place I could find content about Bitcoin. And I was so ignorant. I still had a bunch of shit coins. I had everything in a trust wallet, and I'm like, knew nothing.
Oh, trust wallet's not terrible. At least they give you the words and shit. Like, it's not, I mean, I don't know if I trust it, ironically. Yeah. But it's better than Coinbase. I'll say that. But yeah, I mean, the shit, I got saved from the shit coining because, like I told you, I was focused on the production. So like, when all of a sudden I started learning about these other coins, every time I learned about a coin, and I was like, well, how is it produced? Like, can you mine it? You know? And then when you couldn't mine it, I was like, well, fuck, that's stupid. That's just central banking 2.0. Done, like moving on. So I only got distracted by like Litecoin for a minute. I actually thought Litecoin might have some utility as like a test net for Bitcoin. Like, it was a live network. Maybe we could throw updates on and see if it broke shit before we pushed updates to Bitcoin. And then I figured out that Bitcoin had its own test net that you can mine. You know, you can push hash rate to and thing, and it's like, it's going on in the background. So I was like, oh, well, that's stupid. Like, so what is Litecoin is just, Litecoin's purpose was to enrich Charlie Lee. That's what Litecoin's purpose was.
I got
you know,
big into
yeah.
tokens.
Into what?
The gaming tokens, like Guardians of, where they would play games and, for money. So they had like guilds, gaming guilds. They had like a Sandbox, which was like the little, almost like a real estate play. You never heard of Sandbox or any of those?
Well, I've heard of like the Guardians of the Galaxy coin. I don't think I've heard of that. Was it a cryptocurrency or was it just like a in-game token? Was it like Candy Crush Diamonds?
No, it was GGG. It wasn't Guardian.
Like,
it was
like World of Warcraft money kind of a thing.
Yeah, something like that. I was mainly just trying to find. I thought gamers were going to come in and just stay, and it was where I was looking for the next big, I guess, thesis to back. You know how sometimes it's an AI.
You were looking for the get rich.
Oh, absolutely.
The get rich game. Yeah, no, that's what it's all about, man. It's all about get rich quick, man. Like that.
I didn't understand money back then. It wasn't until I got into the Bitcoin community that I read, Lynn Alden's book, Saifedeem's book, that I started to understand what
money
was, what money was. That's when Bitcoin popped. When
that's fair. Okay, because like I had like that foundational understanding from college because I like really studied that stuff, and I was pretty much a precious metal kind of geek. I don't think precious metals like gold and silver have much future. I think that they actually have more utility in many ways. Plus, you can't audit the supply. There's Bitcoin is better in a million ways. One thing as a bearer instrument that I think will always compete in the world, especially in a chaotic world, is ammunition, right? Like standard ammunition, standard 9 mil, 223, 22 LRs. Like that's something that I will always have a fucking stockpile of. And they even though they're, technology is allowed ammunition. It's a lot like precious metals because it's it's copper and brass and lead, right? It's just commodities, but, and, a gun's worthless without ammo, right? So it's there's this this very inelastic utility to it, but not having that background, Bitcoin would have been very different to me in my mind, right? Like I sympathize with how it'd just be like another vehicle to number go up, right? Like $100 in, $500 out kind of a thing, right? Like I see, and I have sympathy for all those people that fall into that trap. Greed is a hell of a drug. Like BlockFi and like the yield, right? Like it's, I started a little company. I was a customer of Upstream Data back in 2018, and it's me and my dad as partners. And we borrowed low six figures through a small percentage of it to mine, bought an engine, a Bitcoin mine and stuff. And then the rest of it, we just put into Bitcoin with the idea of like an 8 to 10 year hold, like a minimum 7-year hold, I think was in our founding documents. And I came to him about BlockFi because we were mining, and we were like, today's value, we were mining a lot of Bitcoin. I think we were mining like 1.5 million sats a day, right? Which today is like $1,000 or something, right? And we had a 5% interest on our loan. And what the smart money would do is you'd mine to BlockFi. And I had plenty of guys in the Bitcoin space that were telling, like in my telegrams talking about this, mine to BlockFi, and then you're earning 5% interest on your mining rewards. And so, that's the way to finance your debt, right? Is like, if you got that way you could just throw all your Bitcoin, into BlockFi. And if you've got 5% interest on your loan, Bitcoin could be at the same price as it was, 7 years later. And you would at least have enough money to pay your debt like that. And when I told my dad about this, he was like, oh yeah, let's do it. And I was like, and I thought about it for a couple of days. And I remember I came back to him and I was like, if we do this, I don't want to be a part of the company. I was like, it's counterintuitive to me. Bitcoin's whole point is removing counterparty risk. We're just reintroducing counterparty risk for a measly 5%. I was like, I think the likelihood that these guys fail is 100% over enough time. In the next 7 years, it's probably pretty high. Let's not. And my dad God, my son is such a cult member of this Bitcoin shit. He's like, fine, we won't do it. You know everything. And then lo and behold, that would have, we would have been fucked. Totally lost. Totally sunk the company. Yeah, it would have sunk the fucking company. That one decision, we could have made every decision up to that point could have been right. The one decision fucked the whole deal. Like we would have gotten paid out. They got the people got paid out like $17,500 a coin, is what the class action lawsuit got paid out to, I think, holders. I think it was like 17 or 18 grand a coin. At the time, Bitcoin was like 40 grand a coin when this started happening, from what I understand. So it was like we would have lost but we would have been sunk. It would have been a failed venture. We could have done mining right. We bought under $10,000 a coin. We could have done that right.
What's a scam right now we need to be cautious of? I mean,
that'll come. That's coming back. Like, trust me, the lending yield platforms aren't going anywhere. Okay, that's gonna happen. I think a big part. I think that there's always a huge scam potential with mining. Certainly, like hosting and things like that. It's not necessarily ETFs. I think it's counterintuitive to the whole point of Bitcoin, right? Like Bitcoin's purpose if you look at the white paper, right? I mean, I don't treat Satoshi like some prophet. I think he was very wise, had a really good understanding of, and designed a hell of a system with counterbalancing measures. Quite genius, but I don't know if he's prophetic. You know what I mean? So I don't worship all the words like some people do, but I understand the purpose was removing counterparty risk from the equation, right? Removing intermediaries, permissionlessness is, it's like, so anything that reintroduces counterparty risk, I think is something to evaluate with a sober and critical mind. Like that's why I love Unchained, right? Like Unchained, they seemingly it's like, are they introducing no, they actually do the opposite, where they're like, listen, like, you could have a 5 signature deal. Like you have 2 of the keys or 3 of the keys, and we have 1, they have 1, and you need 3 keys to move it. So you can lose a key and come to us, but we can't, viciously act against you and move your money without you. And so that's kind of I think that stuff's really cool, but the ETFs, they're not all proving their reserves, right? Like I think Van Eck is, and maybe Fidelity.
And probably Kathy.
I thought Van Eck was too. Like I thought that because Van Eck published their address that they were holding their Bitcoin, and somebody sent them Bitcoin. So they were sent them 500,000 sats, and then they were over collateralized. It was hilarious. I thought it was because they posted their address. So somebody just sent them $50 of Bitcoin, and now they had too much. I thought it was fucking hilarious. It's fantastic. Man. So I think the ETFs could be a really cool vehicle if everybody that's the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is in 2 minutes somebody questions. If I was the head of the BlackRock ETF and I saw somebody tweet yeah, but they're rehypothecating and they don't actually have the reserves, I'd be like, fuck this guy, and I'd go out and sign a transaction and be like, boom, yeah, we do, motherfucker. I think that would be really cool. That accountability, but as far as I understand today, that's not the case. And so, much like this thing I hate about equities, there's companies that I would like to own. I think that they're doing good things, and I like to support companies that I think are doing, building cool things. Even oil and gas companies. I fucking hate the fact that I have to ask permission, and somebody's I have Robinhood could rug me, or E-Trade, or Charles Schwab. I have to go through them, and trust me, when shit hits the fan, all those things are going to freeze up. Their customer service isn't going to answer the phone because everybody's going to be calling. You're not going to be able to access your money. That's where when I think about that, I'm like, man, that's going to be a very small percentage of my net worth is going to be in things that require
cold storage, baby.
Well, I don't want to have to ask permission to access my wealth, because when it matters is the exact same moment that your permission is going to be denied.
That's right.
Either denied or delayed, right? The moment it matters, it's like with a gun, right? It's like the moment you need a gun is, what you would pay for one in that moment where, somebody's threatening your life is worth 1,000,000 times more than the cost of the gun, right? So it's Like it's a very simple risk reward ratio in my mind. And I just can't get over that permissioned aspect of things. I mean, I even, I do own some equities and it still kind of haunts me in many ways. I'm like, should I, like, I mean, I even owned like some Bitcoin mining stocks last year. And at one point I woke up and I was like, fuck this. I literally just like market sold my entire portfolio, withdrew it, bought Bitcoin. I'm like, I'm done. I'm fucking done.
I got Nuclear Bitcoiner just said mandibles here. I don't know if you know Bitcoiner.
Yeah, I know Nuclear. He's a smart guy.
I love him.
He's ahead of his time. I mean, I always tell with him, I'm like, man, the problem with nuclear power is the amount of bureaucracy and government required.
Oh, 100%.
Like it's
100%.
The government is so in the way on that. It's such a fucking problem. Like, and I will say, like, there is a part of me that is like, man, we have so many hydrocarbons. We have so many means of generating power, like, especially with, with fusion, right? Like with fusion nuclear, I think. I mean, I'm not an expert. It could be fission. I'm not really exactly sure. But whichever one can run away from you, right? Because if it runs away, it's like trying to extinguish the sun, right? Like even if you had like a fire hose that was, diameter of like the planet Earth and you were shooting water at the sun, it would just make the sun bigger, right? The sun would just take in that water and it would use it as fuel, right? Like it would just increase the like the risk of that nuclear, I guess, is like we turn the planet into a fucking sun. And I don't know if that's worth it. Like maybe we should exhaust other resources first. Before, like,
we need to get Nuclear on here to defend the nuclear crowd.
I know, and I'm sure he would make me look like a fool, right? But there is like, even like if it's like a very small percentage chance, like let's exhaust some other options and make sure we have this shit like really, 110% certain. Exactly. Like this is not fuck upable. Like we do not want to fuck this up, right? Like an oil spill, yes, it causes environmental problems and there's issue, but like it's not the planet turning into a ball of magma. Like, fantastic. Like, so we should have a discussion with him. I'd love for him to school me on. He's got such a far greater understanding than I do. I have an understanding from my curiosity.
It's been a pleasure interviewing you. I can't wait to see you at. Actually, there's so many people I'm meeting in Nashville. So,
we'll sneak away, maybe go grab a cup of coffee or something. I'll come find you.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Well, thanks for having me on, Craig.
Thanks for your time, man. And I'm going to repost this on YouTube and some other stuff that I got going. So,
I'll see you in like 2 weeks.
Yep, I'll be there, man.
All right, have a good one.
Appreciate you, Adam. Take care.